You got to tell me a little bit about Mama Joe's collection clothing. I mean, clearly I got some on. I'm a
Yes.
big fan. You got some
Awesome.
on. Where did this idea come from? Like, how did you get started, bro?
Well, it also kind of goes back to All Art Ain't Pretty. When I was finishing that album up, if you listen to it, there's I don't even call them skits because they're not skits. They're conversations, recorded conversations that I had with my mom where I'm talking her through her frustrations, through her artistic process and some of the difficulties that she's having with being able to get her vision out, and just encouraging her and giving her a different perspective on her artistic approach. And I knew that those were going to be very powerful pieces of the album, but also those are just very small glimmers of the daily types of conversations I had with my mom, trying to encourage her to do her art. And for me, that was still an ongoing fight. Like, how do I figure out how to get her to appreciate her art the way other people do, or the way that I do, or how can I get her to understand that she is very talented and her art can be really impactful to the world. So I would always look for these opportunities, whether it would be to do, an art showing as part of a show, or bringing her to Tuesday Verses and letting her bring her art and, and speak to the people and sell art there. Had, other websites and things where I displayed her art over the years. So I would always look for these different things. And one of the times when my mom was in a physical rehab place, I had used a vendor that I used to make some of my clothes make a pair of socks with her art on it. And that was like the first piece. And she was like blown away by that. And it really helped her like through, that particular process. And I think I made like one other thing, like a hoodie, but it wasn't how these are. It was, just like on the front. I hadn't really figured it out yet. And then, I was like, I'm really going to get into this. I'm really going to get into this at some point. But I'm not like, I do clothing and merch and, I got Richmond's Own and stuff like that, but I wouldn't consider myself like some like huge, like knowledgeable fashion person to where I would have thought that we would be at this point, right? But I think, somebody that I know was like, man, you really should, put your mom's art on like clothes or something. And I'm like, or they wanted to figure out how to do it. Like, and I was like, in my mind, I'm like, this is something that I know that I'm supposed to do. And before I can let anyone else do it, I need to do it, right? So I just started like really like sitting down at nights and just working on designs. And I started to figure out that I was pretty good at it, and I was getting excited about these different pieces. It was like writing verses. So it was like, I'd be like, oh, and I'd tell my, my fiance at the time, my wife now, like, yo, come take a look at this, like, what you think of this shirt, or what do you think of this bathing suit? And I'm like, I'm making bathing suits, I'm making dresses, like, this is so crazy. But it was like, the stuff was coming out really good. So, but I knew if I was going to release it, it had to be like right, the website, the postings, everything had to be legit. Like, it had to be right. So I really kind of dedicated myself to it for like a month before the album came out. I released the album on one day and I released the line the next day. And then it like really like kind of like took a life of its own. Like, immediately people were supporting it. And it's been kind of a ride since. I mean, it's, it has its ebbs and flows as far as like people buying stuff and everything. But as far as people appreciating it, that's constantly taking an upward swing. And, I just, now, my mom is passed now. And for me, it's just like what I was most proud about it, in addition to just, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It really motivated her to make more art. She made a lot more art and art more consistently. She was able to see her art in a fashion show for RV Fashion Week, and just to be there and get her you know, a round of applause and her flowers was like amazing to me. You know, so unfortunately didn't get to you know, bought a new house and wanted to, you know, give her the garage as her art studio. Didn't quite get to that particular point to see where her journey was going to go from there. But I was able to create a legacy for my mom's art and for her, and, you know, that'll continue to live on, and that's going to continue to grow. And, you know, so I have a renewed inspiration and motivation to make sure that, you know, Mama Jo's collection is even bigger than it ever has been or could think of it being. So, yeah.
That's really beautiful. I found myself identifying like a lot with your mom in those like skits or those conversations, you know, because at one point she's talking about the art that she makes versus the art that it looks real, like the photogenic. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, like portrait
real life. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But like, you know, her style versus this, and she kept calling her style weird.
Right.
And I really appreciated that you kind of step in as like this conscious moment. You're just like, look, it's just what you do. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not weird. Like, you can't do that because you're not supposed to be doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And what was your process kind of finding out that lesson? Like, how did you find out, all right, this is what I do. I need to focus on this.
That's gems right there. Yeah.
I think for me, it was, you know, in hip hop, I hate to continue to harken back to a different day, but, you know, when I was coming up, we talk about this a lot, me and Mike, you know, you had to have your own style. You had to, you know, you had to stand out. Like, that was like part of it. Like, if you wanted to be in it, you had to be, this is you and this is what you bring, you know. And it was like, collectively, this is what it all was. It wasn't like a million people that sounded the same. Like, now it's like everybody just, you know, not everybody, but, you know, you have a bunch of artists that sound like this, you have a bunch of artists that sound like that, a bunch of artists that sound like that, you know. It's like, and they don't even try to make it different or differentiate at all. You know, the only differentiation that people try to make now between one another is like how far they're willing to like exploit themselves on the internet. You know, it's like, I'll look crazy like this, but I still make music that sounds just like this guy. You know what I'm saying? But I'm willing to do this craziness. You know what I'm saying? Right, like, yeah, that's kind of how people set themselves apart now.
It's
like,
the same book with a new cover.
Yeah, how can you go viral, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's not everyone. I mean, that's what's like, oh no, there's a lot of, yes, there's a ton of talented people right now doing dope original things. You know what I'm saying? But there's also a million clones as well. Yeah. And that's just not how things work. So, I mean, that in and of itself was a lesson that I learned coming into it. For my mom, it was more like, how I viewed it was, I'm drawn to your art because of how unpolished it is, how off-kilter it is, how it seems like it comes from like either your soul or like some deep, deep place in your mind. Like, you've seen all of these things, and then when you're sitting down with your materials, you somehow spill out all of like a random, it's like, you know, and that just came from like over here somewhere, and then this one like came from, it's like this, where did this like Chinese inspired, African inspired figures coincide into like this other world that you created, and like then you threw an ocean on it. It's like, but you can tell it has a focus. It's not just, you know, it's like savant stuff. Like, you're really just kind of like zoning in, and like, this is what came from it. That's different than, you know, me saying I've technically learned how to graph a train and make a train look exactly like a train. And, you know, I mean, like, that's great. That's a talent, but that can be taught. There's books you can buy, you can go to classes, they can teach you. No one can teach you how to make what my mom made, you know. and for it to feel to people how it felt. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to get her to understand that, like, that's, yes, it's abstract. No, it's not. It's technically sound, but it's what art is. Art is an expression. Like I said, it's a human expression, and like, you're doing that in its purest way. Like, so don't feel like you have to tinker with that, or that you have to compete with what you see, because I know people that want to buy that and they want to put that on their wall, but they don't want to buy a picture of a train and put that on their wall. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, you have to like be like a train collector to want to put a train.
Don't hate on train collectors.
Nothing's wrong with train collectors. I'm not saying that.
No, just message.
I'm just saying there's a lane for everyone, and you know, just you know what I'm saying. And it's not to take away from anyone that does portrait artistry. That is an amazing gift. You know, hyper realistic art is an amazing gift. I'm just saying that there's room for both.
Yeah,
so it's
and
like,
you should appreciate what you do and your contribution. No, I got it. You hate trains. I'm with it.